else, because our faith is in something, right? Our faith might be in only what we can see. And so sometimes everyone goes, well, my faith is in what I can see, so it's concrete, as I understand. But that's it. It's only in what you can see. What about all the things that you can't see? Hey everyone, welcome back to Bible 365. I am your host, Kathy Carter, bringing you the Bible every day for 365 days. We are getting near the end now. So if you have never been here before, I'm reading through the Bible chronologically, and I'm using a reading plan from oneyearbibleonline.com, where you could go on and download one of three ways. You could click on a link, which takes you to the daily reading. You could download a free printable reading plan to use with your own Bible, or you can purchase one of their Bibles that they have available in chronological order. Up to you. My deal is I just want you to read first before you get here. If you're still not reading, and I know that that's definitely true for some people, I still just want you to be here, but I know that reading, and I want you to be here to understand and to try and kind of put some of those things in there, but I always want you to go back and read, because what I say, I mean, this is the way I read it. This is how I study it. This is how I'm allowing the Spirit to work through me and understand it. But that doesn't mean I'm right. I'm just a person, just like everybody else. So I want to make sure that you guys are getting in there as well. Okay. Today, our reading is day 355. That seems outrageous. 355, which means we have like 11 days left. It is December 20th, and our reading is Hebrews 11 and 12. And if all goes well, I'm actually going to post a song at the in the link, because I don't think I can post it in the video, but I'm going to post it in the link, because a lot of the lyrics from this song are in the book of Hebrews. And so it's called I Thank God by Maverick City. And I might pass some other things where I would say that that's what the song is in. But again, I'm hoping to post it if at all possible. Okay. So if you haven't been here before, I have this history at the end of the video. It's 3 minutes. At the very end, it's the same history every single day. And it is from Genesis 1 to the ascension of Jesus. I just give like a brief summary, like a wrap up. Where we are now in history, because this is not, when I read, if you've never been here before, even if you've been here a couple of times, it's worth kind of saying again. The way I read is I try to read it as the reader at the time would have read this. So this letter was sent to a people group, and I'm trying to read it as the people group would have read it, because I feel like that's what makes it make better sense. And then once we understand that, then we can pull what that means for us in our time as the type of believers that we are. Some things are universal, like strive for salvation. Like that's universal, right? That's not just for a couple of believers. That's for everybody. That's not just for the Jewish people, or it's not just for the Gentiles. That's for everyone. So that's great. But some things are very specific to certain authors or certain audiences. Okay. So after Jesus, right before Jesus ascended, I do this every single time, he gave a command to the people that were following him. So there were lots of people following him. He gave this command. He opened the scriptures up, like he touched them, and he opened up the scriptures to some of them, to I believe the apostles that he sent out. But he wanted everybody to go out. He said, I came here. You saw everything that I saw, that I did. You saw everything that I said, heard everything that I said. I keep messing over these words. You saw everything I did. You heard everything I said. And now you're going to see me ascend up into the right hand of God. You saw me die. You saw me resurrected. And now you're going to see me ascend. I want you as an eyewitness of all of these things to go out, spread yourselves out among the world, and let everybody know what you have seen. First to the Jewish person, right? The people who would have understood that the Messiah was the Messiah, the one from the Lord. Then to the Gentile, those who would have had not as much of an understanding, which I think in some ways the reason that he did this, first of all, it's because it's the people he chose. But I think another reason why he did this is they were, right, the people that he chose, the Jewish community, the people who were the Israelites, the 12 tribes, those were the people he chose to save out of Egypt. And those were the ones that should have had a greater understanding of what all of it meant. So Gentiles would have had this tiny little picture, but the Israelites from the 12 tribes would have understood how that went all the way back to the time of Genesis with the Lord. Like, not that Jesus was a separate person. Like, oh, Jesus is a God and God is a God. No, they're not separate. They're all one and the Holy Spirit isn't different. They're all linked and they're all God together. And so that is why he would send to this people group, and then this people group was supposed to go out. So this is a letter to the Hebrews, called this because it was likely, from what the author is saying, that it was one or multiple. I think it was multiple because it says we. My dog is again chewing his bone right next to me, as he does all the time when I record in here. So just sorry, hearing that clicking. That's what's happening. Going back to, that this person was probably, it's probably multiple because it says we, the author says we on multiple occasions. So there's a few of them that are together that are probably writing this letter collectively, and they're writing it, they're Israelites because they say our ancestors, and they're probably writing it to the 12 tribes, right? The Israelites, because they say our ancestors, meaning collectively. And then they're also talking about all of how the Old Testament, all these stories and things from the Old Testament are a shadow of what came when Jesus came. And so our hope isn't in the old, but our hope is in the new. Our hope is in Jesus, who fulfilled all of the old. It's not just like we throw that away and pretend like it never happened. That has never been the plan. It's to understand how all of that was sort of the setup for the Messiah to come. So we don't forget it. We don't ignore it. We don't pretend it never happened, but this is the fulfillment of that. So, all right, so we are into this reading. This is Hebrews chapters 11 and 12. And I like the way this is set up. So we've just essentially come from Jesus is better than. He's better than the angels. He's better than Moses. He's better than Melchizedek. He's better. These are all the things that you knew that happened in according to the Torah and the prophets. And then, but Jesus is the fulfillment of all of those things. So then he says, now faith, because he's saying to have faith, that we must have faith. We must strive for faith. We must live in faith for what happened and then what is to come in the future. And he says faith is two things. It's confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So the confidence in what we hope for, this is the beauty of, if you went through the Old Testament with me, I really hope that you see this string of images. Every time God did something big, he would commemorate it with something. He would commemorate it with an altar. And I say he, through the people that he had on this earth. He would commemorate it with an altar. He would commemorate it with a day. He would commemorate it with a celebration. So every time he did something big, there was always a reminder that the people would go, oh, that was God. Oh, that was God. Oh, that was God. So there was always this understanding that they would have known that that was God. The reason is he would go, I did this, and now I'm telling you that this is to come. And because you know that I did this, you will have faith in what is to come. So again, a faith is confidence in what we hope for. I have the confidence. This is me personally. So this is how we bring it to ourselves. They had the confidence then that Jesus was the Messiah that was promised. Because of all those promises that he fulfilled before. And then he's like, I'm confirming to you that Jesus is that Messiah. And they were like, oh, now we have faith that Jesus is that Messiah because of everything that he's done. For us, I think that there's some of that in there as well, but there's also a faith in what's to come. He says, I'm going to come back. There's going to be judgment. There's going to be life and death. And I know that that's true. I have faith in that to come, because of all that I've seen that he's done since then. So every single picture, every single promise that he fulfilled gives me the faith, the confidence in what's to come. And then he says it's also the assurance about what we don't see. And the truth is I don't see God. I don't. I haven't even ever seen Jesus. I didn't see him resurrected from the dead. But my faith is in all of the things that he has done and all of the truths that have come up. And so there's that assurance, because even though I don't see him, I am assured that he is there. And we're going to see some other things too about, in the scriptures, some of the things that he said that these people had faith in. So how we start is, by faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command. We weren't there. So it's only the faith of what we believe. So we have to have faith that either it was God or it was something else. And because of all the things that he's done, because of the faith in what we don't see, the assurance in what we don't see, we have faith that God is the one who formed the universe because he said he did. By faith, Abel brought a better offering than Cain did. So it was his faith that had anything to do with his offering. So we always go into that beginning in Genesis and we go, what was it? Was it that his meat wasn't fatty enough? Was it that it was the faith in which Abel brought that offering. That offering might have been 2 pieces of fruit, but the faith is that he was giving to the Lord in which he loved, in which he worshiped and honored, and the faith of what was to come. And that didn't come from his brother. By faith, Enoch, who again, Old Testament, Genesis, Enoch was taken from this life. Enoch didn't experience death. And what we saw in Enoch was like, after his first 60 years, he followed the Lord righteously. Like he faithfully followed the Lord from that. And therefore he didn't die. He was lifted up. And he did that because of his faith. Without faith, it's impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Again, this idea of what is and isn't good. If you have been given the blessing of seeing him and you turn from him, and your faith lies then in something else, because our faith is in something, right? Our faith might be in only what we can see. And so sometimes everyone goes, well, my faith is in what I can see. So it's concrete, I understand. But that's it. It's only in what you can see. What about all the things that you can't see? You can't see maybe farming happening, but you have faith that the fruit that comes to you has been farmed. You can't see gravity, but you have faith when you're walking that gravity keeps you on the ground. There are a number of things that we have faith in that we actually literally have never seen for our very own eyes, but we have to have faith in that in order to exist on earth. So everybody has faith of some kind, because none of us are privy to every single bit of information of everything in front of us. Without it, it's impossible to please God. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place, obeyed and went. Again, going back to the Old Testament, because he was looking forward to the city. He was promised a city. He never saw it, but he was promised this city. And so he was looking forward to that. He was looking forward to going to the next place that God told him to, and then forward to the next place. And he lived in tents all the time. Now, he might have lived in a really wealthy way, which we definitely saw at some areas, like he was blessed, and Isaac was blessed over and over and over again. And they had tons of herds and sheep and all that, and cattle and all those things. So they were blessed, but they were still living in tents. They didn't have a permanent home. God had never given them a permanent home. He just gave them a promise of a permanent home. And that permanent home was after their bodily life was over. And it said, by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled children, because she considered him faithful who had made that promise. And I remember being questioned about this once, because Sarah laughed when he said that she was going to have the baby. Sarah laughed. And I'm going to admit, like, she didn't handle that the best of ways, but she had faith that she was going to have a kid. She just thought that maybe she would have a kid through somebody else. So I don't mean not through Abraham, I mean through her maid, because they were actually considered their kids as well. So she took a worldly view of how she was going to have kids instead of just wholeheartedly listening to the Lord. But there was never a time where she didn't think she was going to have a kid. And that's why she sent Hagar into the tent with Abraham in the first place, because she was like, God promised us this kid. All of these people were still living by faith when they died. He said, and they were longing for a better country. By faith, Abraham, when God tested him, offered Isaac as a sacrifice. By faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau in regard to their future. By faith, Jacob blessed each of Joseph's sons with the future, right? Remember, we saw that. By faith, Joseph, when his end was near, spoke about the exodus of the Israelites. He told them, he gave that prophecy of when they were going to be captured for 400 years, and then they're going to be saved by the Lord. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months. By faith, Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be known as refused to be known as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to be mistreated along with the people of God rather than to enjoy that life. And again, we saw this in the Exodus. He was, his parents hid him in the reeds, and then Pharaoh's daughter wound up finding him, wound up raising him. And instead of living there with them, he went and he lived. He went into his people to understand his people more, which were the ones that were enslaved by Pharaoh. He regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt, A few more. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell. By faith, Rahab welcomed the spies, and so she wasn't killed. And what more shall I say? I don't have time to talk about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets. Some of these were from Judges. Some of these were from the books of Samuel. Some of these were Kings. All of them by faith, their weakness was turned to strength. And it said, women received back their dead, raised to life again. This was one of the stories in Elijah. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so they might gain a better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging and chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. That was a lot of the prophets. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated, which was possibly Jeremiah. The world was not worthy of all of these people. All of these people who love the Lord did the plan or the job that the Lord asked them to do, and the world scorned them, which happens all the time now. Like that still happens. So there's still this idea, like even as minor, right? As some younger people, like I'm an older person, so the judgments aren't, I don't want to say they're quite not the same, but they are. But like younger people who are solid in their faith and they refrain from a lot of things that the other people do. Like they don't party, they don't drink, they don't curse, they don't like have partners. They might not even have like girlfriends or boyfriends, right? Like they might not even have any kind of relationships. And because of that, they're scorned by their peers. They're ostracized a little bit, set apart, different from everybody else. So there is always suffering when you choose to follow the Lord, because he is set apart and different. And so if you follow him, you also are set apart and different. And not usually by our doing. Like we're not like, oh, I can't believe that you're doing that. And so, well, I'm sure there are people who do that, but that's not how we're supposed to be. Oh, I can't believe that you're doing that. And so I'm not going to hang out with you anymore. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's quite the opposite. And it says, so this says the world wasn't worthy for them. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what was promised. None of them lived through Jesus's time. So none of them saw the saving Messiah that could make them righteous, that could give them righteousness by his death on the cross. Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles. So he's like, I just gave you this huge list of all these people of faith. All these people of faith are kind of up in the clouds and they're cheering for you down here. And now this visual that I had, and I'm not sure if anyone else had this when they read it, but, and I show my age by doing this, but this visual I had was like when Mel Gibson was in front of, in Braveheart, when he was like in front and he was giving him this like, we can do this, great encouraging speech, right? Like go out. I don't remember any of the speech, but I remember like he's on his horse and he's walking back and forth in front of all the warriors when they're about to go out and fight. And I think they're going to fight a battle where they're the underdogs, right? There's not necessarily a good odds of them winning. But what he does is he sparks this hope in them. And he gives them this encouragement to strengthen them and able to send them out. And I feel like that's what this entire chapter is. So the writers of this were like, let me tell you all these people. And now, because of all of this, because of all that you have seen, because of the faith of all of these people that you've heard about before you, we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. Throw off anything and everything that is hindering you from being in this faith. Now, these people at that time, their hindrance seems to be, some of their hindrances were that they were going back and relying on the law. And he's like, that's not what they died for. They didn't die for the law. They died for the Messiah. They died for the purpose of the what's to come. And you guys are going back and you're trying to focus on only the things that they focused on at that time. He said, so throw off those hindrances and throw off the sin that easily entangles. And a lot of that will be for us. So for us, I'm going to say some of those hindrances, and I don't want to be fair, that I feel like some of the hindrances could be from the church that we go to, right? It could be from, like we've been fed certain things. And some of them aren't 100% right. And I don't care what church you go to. You've definitely been fed things. And if you're not reading your Bible, you're getting the goggles of your pastor, which are your pastor. Like if you've been with me for 355 days up to this point, if you've been with me this long, you will recognize that there are things that I focus on, and I'm not trying to do it deliberately. Like I wish I could hit every single thing. I can't. And I'm who I am. I'm my personality. I have my own personal struggles. And so my rose colored glasses come through. I'm going to use the big word of my eisegesis comes in, and I don't want it to. I want to exegete as much as I possibly can, but I'm unrealistic if I say there is no eisegesis in there, which basically just means like my own opinion. So that would be unrealistic to say that doesn't filter into some of this. So if you've been sitting at the same church for 10 years, under the same pastor for 10 years, and you've never listened to anybody else, there's a very good chance that you are getting their 100% opinion and you're missing pieces. If you have been in a certain system, and this is a traditional maybe kind of system, and I don't care what it is, there's all kinds of different traditional systems, you are probably missing pieces. And so that's some of the hindrances that we would have, right? We would go, no, this is what I'm used to. So this is all that I'm going to do. And I'm not going to look at anything outside of that. And that would be a hindrance. Now, the other thing is the sin that entangles us. And we have to also be honest that all of us have sin. And that sin is very, very easily entangling us. It could be one significant sin, and it could be the fact that maybe you are, going with an easy one, you are always envious. You live your life in envy. You watch what other people have, and you think life isn't fair because you don't have what they have. You are nice. You are good. You do your work every day, and you somehow don't get what they get. And like they're the golden child for some reason, but they're a total jerk. They make fun of people all the time. And I don't understand why I'm not getting what they're getting. And again, that's just an example, right? That is a sin that is, it's encompassing us. It's not allowing us to have the faith of the Lord because we're so overwhelmed by it. And those are the things that we need to let go. So because you know all of this stuff that we just read for 11 chapters, we can't let these things get in our way. We have to open the road, let the Holy Spirit open the road to be free and clear that the Lord constantly has access to anything and everything of who we are. He said, let us run the race with perseverance, the one that is marked out for us. And I just want to hit on this. This is one like that. Every little section, I want to hit every sentence I want us to hit on. So I got to skip some, but this one I think is really important because it says that we want to run with perseverance the road that the Lord has marked out for us because He does have a plan for us. That doesn't mean the plan will be fulfilled if you turn away from the Lord. Like He's not. And this is maybe like this whole idea of free will versus not free will. Look, again, I don't want to go too far into that, but what this means, right, is He has this road. Like, so He looks at me and He said, these are the things I want Kathy Carter to do. Kathy Carter, and maybe it was long before I was born, He had this plan for me. And yet I don't always follow through on His plan. And I can tell you for the first 32 years of my life, I didn't follow His plan because I was turned away from the Lord. So I certainly wasn't following His plan because I wasn't even listening to Him. I wasn't even allowing Him to work in my life. And I don't think, by the way, I don't think not being a believer was part of His plan. I think He wants us to believe and to love. And so He marks out like the things that He wants us to do, right? The things that are created especially for you as a person because of His love for you. But we need to let go of the hindrances and the encumbrances and the sins and everything else that entangles us in order to follow that plan that He has marked out for us. Can you see the footsteps? Can you see the light? He always calls Himself a light onto my feet or a light onto my path. Can you see that light, or have you, kind of closed it off with the sin or with the hindrances? So it says we got to fix our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before Him, He endured the cross, scorning its shame. So this is some of the things that I was saying is in the song. So He endured the cross. For the joy set before, because I love my people. And because we have a plan for them to be righteous and faithful and follow this walk. And so I am going to be crucified. I'm going to be mortified. I'm going to be embarrassed. He said, I'm setting aside that shame of death, because he could have come in and wiped everything out, right? He could have freed himself. He could have done whatever it is he wanted, but he endured all of this for us to be able to walk on that path that the Lord has walked out for us, put in front of us. He said he sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who enjoyed such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So consider this. I don't want you to fall into these traps. I don't want you to lose heart. Remember the things that he did for you. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And I think this very directly is talking to this Jewish audience and which he's with. Because he said earlier, like, some are in the milk, some are falling away from the faith. He was like, but I don't consider that one of you. And he's saying the same thing. He's like, I don't think you guys are too far gone yet. So he said, consider this. You haven't resisted enough. So you haven't persevered. That the shedding of blood would be like when Jesus was sweating so hard, it was like he was crying tears. He's like, you guys haven't really worked hard enough. You have, when let's just say you're obviously I work in a school. Let's just say you're trying to do your homework, and you kind of jump in and you're like, I don't really get this, and you put it off to the side. Have you tried hard enough to even attempt to do the work? Are you listening to the teacher that's giving you the information? Are you in your work? Are you reading? Are you going home and doing homework? Are you studying for your test? Or are you just like, I don't really get that. This is what he's saying. He's like, I don't see you guys pushing through as hard as you can. I don't see you working to your best capacity. He said, endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. So discipline is good. We should know that. We don't at this day and age, but discipline is good. You need to correct people when they're doing wrong. And so discipline is a good thing. So if God is doing that to you, and in some ways you're suffering, and God is disciplining you, you should recognize that's because he loves you. And so so note the discipline, note why there's discipline, right? Endure that hardship in order to turn back towards him, right? So then you can be persevering in him. They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good in order that we may share in his holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time. It's awful. It's painful. He said, but it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. And if you came out on the other side of enduring any kind of discipline or harshness, and you've come out on the other end, faithfully so, sticking with the Lord, I am hopeful, because I know it's true for me. There is so much peace at the other end. Like once your eyes kind of have lit up to it, and you've recognized that it's discipline and it's love from the Lord, and you've stuck with the Lord through all that, right? Like you've persevered to the point of shedding blood. There is joy and peace at the other end of that. It's hard in the time to recognize it. He said, therefore, strengthen your feeble arms and your weak knees, because this is going to come. Make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows to cause trouble. And so again, this is working together in a community, right? He said, see that no one is sexually immoral or godless like Esau. Sexual immorality and godlessness, like turning away from the Lord, I think that they're combined, right? Because this is what he always said about getting divorced or immorality. It was like a turning away from the Lord. And so it's very physical in your own life, right? So sustaining from sexual immorality in your own life is staying true to the Lord. And he's saying it's keeping you from godlessness, because you're then keeping your eyes on the prize, which is the Lord. He said, you haven't come to a mountain that can be touched. He said, he's using this imagery of when, so this next little section is when Moses was on the mountain, and they said, don't touch this mountain, because if you touch this mountain, it's going to burn you up. And people did, for what, like, they didn't believe, they didn't have faith. And so they touched the mountain and they were burned up. And he was like, listen, that little thing right there, like that's the mountain that they touched. He was like, but this is, you're not touching that mountain right now. Right now, you're in Mount Zion. So he says, you've come to Mount Zion, the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You've come to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. So be confident, not in touching it that you're going to be burned up, but in that the Lord is giving you all of these things. It says, see to it that you don't refuse him. So when they refused God and burned up on that mountain, see to it that you don't do this with Jesus, because you're coming to Jesus and he's given you all of these things. He said, therefore, we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe, because our God is a consuming fire. When we come to this Mount Zion, when we come to this mountain that could consume us because the mountain consumed them, we need to come to it with a reverence and an awe that he is worthy of, the kind of worship that the Lord is worthy of. We need to remember, all of us who believe, not just those in this letter, but all of us who say we believe, our posture towards the Lord, recognizing that the Lord can consume us exactly the same way that mountain consumed those people who didn't follow the Lord, right? This is even bigger. So again, talking about that shadow, this is even bigger. This is now going to the Lord, to Mount Zion. And God is a consuming fire. So we just need to be reverent. We need to be loving the Lord. We need to remember, as always, who he is. That's how I'm ending for today. So if you have found this to be a blessing, I want you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And then I want you to keep reading. So keeping in the book of Hebrews, we got a little bit more left for tomorrow. And then I will see you guys next time. Bible is a whole book. It is not a bunch of different little books. It is, but it's successively a whole unit, and you can't necessarily fully grasp what you're reading today if you don't do anything back in the beginning. So this is where we begin our history. There was a beginning, and the Lord was in the beginning, and the Lord was the only thing, and he was there. He has no beginning, he has no end. He is a being that has created all things. He created the entire universe. He created the earth and everything that surrounds it. He created everything on the earth. He created a beautiful, perfect, picture perfect earth. And then he chose to make two humans in his image. He breathed life into those humans, and he gave them some rules. He planted them in this Garden of Eden, and he said, I want you to be fruitful and multiply. I want you to rule over the earth, and I don't want you to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A tempter came in and pulled them away and drew them towards temptation. So they turned away from the Lord and towards this tempter, and they ate from the tree. First her, then him, she gave to him, and he ate as well. And so since then, there has been a severing between the covenantal relationship between the Lord and his people. And since that time, the Lord has been sending people in order to bring them and draw them in back into relationship with him. Every time it was a human, and it was never able to fully bring that relationship back together. And so at a time that he decided what that time would be, he sent a human, which was fully human and also was fully himself. He was the Son of the Lord, born through a woman named Mary. His name was Jesus. And he was fully God and fully human. And he showed that he was those things by performing the signs that the prophets said in the Old Testament that he would perform all up and down the nation of Israel, turning the nation of Israel toward him. And so some followed, some did not. Those who did not built up, and they crucified him. He was in the ground for 3 days, and then he rose again. And once he rose again and was resurrected, he then taught everyone that he was with what the kingdom of God was like, what it meant to be resurrected. And then he told them, I need you to go out and spread the message. And then he went up into the heavens with the Lord, and he sat at the right hand of the Lord. Since that time, his apostles have been going out and spreading the word all among the nations around there. They were going into Turkey. They were going into Spain. They were going into Europe. They were going into Egypt. And they were in Greece, and they were spreading all over those nations. And they were telling everybody who Jesus was, and they were sending it first to the Jewish people. And then after that, they were spreading it out to the Gentiles.